Hi, so Blizzard have just brought out a report on their, fourth quarterly results of 2018 and indeed their overall results for 2018. We know, of course, that Activision Blizzard shares have been falling quite a lot since really the start of October. Again, a lot of people keep linking that to like BlizzCon. But I mean, there's a couple of reasons why that was absolutely not the case. First of all, that's not when the decline happened. In fact, the rate of decline has been less since BlizzCon than it was in the month prior to BlizzCon. So it's got nothing to do with that. The other thing is the sort of projects announced at BlizzCon are a really small proportion of the overall Activision Blizzard portfolio and profits anyway. The issues, if there are any, and of course, for the shares to drop that much, investors think there are some, is going to be elsewhere. The other thing to bear in mind is when shares go down, of course, that's because there's not as many investors wanting to buy them as sell them. It's not necessarily because a company is in trouble or doing something particularly wrong, but simply because they think they can get a better deal elsewhere, or they don't trust the reliability of the data coming out. So when I was, first looking at these shares, knowing anything in depth about it, I was thinking to myself, well, maybe the situation is, this would make sense to me, that they always give projections about what the profits are likely to be. There's always a thing at the end, and there is in this report as well. There's always a thing in the end about the fact that it's not guaranteed, you're taking a bit of a risk here, but this is what we believe we're going to make. And if they don't make as much, if their profits are going to be less, then we can look at that and say, oh, well, all right, you're still making decent money, but I might be able to get more later on somewhere else. But also, you're not accurately telling me what I'm going to make from here, so I'm going to consider you unreliable. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. If we pull up the old report here, I want to just do a quick search for a word. Let's click on this. Right, I forget share for the moment. Do record. So, record at the top of it, Q4 and full year results. Record 7.5 billion as compared to 7.02 billion for 2017. It doesn't really matter what that's for. It's just record everywhere. They're basically making record profits across this company. This company has even seen, even when you look at the parts of the report that compare what they've made in 2018 compared with what they projected to make, it's exceeding that. So whatever the reason for the share drop had nothing to do with the financial performance of Activision Blizzard. It's done better than expectations. Now, this is a little bit of a surprise, not because the share dropped, because I say there's other reasons for that. Investors think there's even more profit to be made elsewhere. Fortnite, of course, can count for some of that if you're talking about investing in the gaming industry. But we've just had announcements of massive job losses at Blizzard. Estimates, I've seen some people, Wowhead, for example, we're sort of estimating, I think it was a second-hand estimate, that it could be as much as 8 or 9% of Activision Blizzard employees. Most of whom won't be developers, of course. It'll be, admin staff, things like that. But still, that's 8 to 9% of the Activision Blizzard family, because, these companies like to describe their workers as a family, being shown the door. When they're making record profits, they talk about cost cutting in this report. Now, all right, I understand it's a business. I understand that, as they note in the report, you don't just look at the overall thing. You also want to focus in on areas that aren't doing so well. But do you really need to shed up to 9% of your workforce when you are making record profits? Shouldn't you just better utilize them? Because this seems to be an nonsense. That can't be that 8 to 9% of those employees aren't up to scratch. They're not working out. That's ridiculous. You've got a few employees that are not really pulling the weight. No. 8 to 9%, that's not what that is. That is them saying, we reckon we can maximize profits by making these people unemployed. And yes, it's a business, but, I'm a socialist. So straight away I look at that and think, well, that's not really what I would call the moral side of business. Then there's another little thing, because again, as a World of Warcraft player, those of us, even as Blizzard game players, we can sort of look at, the disaster that's been BFA. Now, I want to just do another little search here where it's mentioning Warcraft, because they said something that I thought was a bit hilarious. I think it's the previous one. No, I'm going to come on to that in a minute. Yeah, this was it. So regarding Blizzard things, says Blizzard, blah, 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 in the quarter. Overwatch and Hearthstone saw sequential stability. In other words, no growth, but at least staying on an even keel. And it says, and World of Warcraft saw expected declines post-expansion launch. That can be taken two ways. Do they mean that they expected a decline after launch? And yes, indeed, they saw that. In which case, okay, that's strictly a truthful statement. But if I read that statement, I would suggest, when you're talking about predictions, that it declined, and it declined by the amount they predicted. Well, we can be fairly sure that's not the case, because when there were reports of a massive decline in subscribers, not just the expected post-expansion decline, but the massive decline in October. And of course, it was all hearsay in a way, it was people reading things into it. We can't really know for certain. But over the next few weeks, Blizzard massively, in the World of Warcraft team specifically, massively ramped up their feedback. They went on Reddit, they did Q&As, like very, close together, much more frequent than they normally do. They were on the forum saying things. We've never seen anything like it. I even did a video saying, a Blizzard finally listening. They're actually feeding back now. I did, of course, the cynic in me note a hint of caution saying, well, we'll see if it keeps up. It didn't keep up. A few weeks later, nothing since. But it clearly showed that they were jolted into action by something. Something they regard as a huge PR disaster that needed averting. So it made sense that the rumours that they lost a right load of subscribers unexpectedly would have triggered that. So that was an interesting thing there. So if we look at other things that they're saying about Warcraft as well. So, obviously the concern will be, I've expressed concerns about the fact that, and Ian Hazakostas has been asking for more resources. And when he says resources, he means developers. They're not going to give him more time, of course. So BFA needs a lot more work than was originally planned to get it ready. But the next expansion also needs work. You can't really take off one project to help the other because, they need every expansion to be good. They can't really abandon BFA like they did for Warlords of Draenor. So you look at this, it says in the company outlook, in 2019, the company will increase development investment in its biggest franchises, enabling teams to accelerate the pace and quality of content for their communities and supporting a number of new product initiatives. That'd be interesting. Of course, you can bet when they're released, they won't be released in a ready state because that seems to be the way everyone does it now, even Blizzard. It says the number of developers working on. So Call of Duty, of course, that's their big one, isn't it? Candy Crush, big mobile one. Overwatch, even though that's apparently just steady. Warcraft. Now, with it saying Warcraft here, I looked at that and I thought, does that mean Warcraft as in Warcraft Reforged? Or does it mean World of Warcraft? Does it include everything Warcraft? I assume it does. I haven't in the report seen it refer to Warcraft separately to World of Warcraft, even though I've seen them refer to World of Warcraft specifically as World of Warcraft. So we'll take that to mean World of Warcraft as well. At least I hope it does. Hearthstone and Diablo. Even though I know there's developers left World of Warcraft and I've not seen any sign of them being replaced, but not a huge number. It says, in aggregate, will increase approximately 20% over the course of 2019. So, in aggregate, that just means overall, so the average. So in theory, if you list these games, they could actually reduce the number of developers in a couple of these games and increase it by larger than 20% in other ones overall, so that the overall is 20% increase. Again, you would assume that listing those games means that those games are going to benefit. All of them are going to have an increase in developers of some level so that the overall is 20%. But, you can easily reduce it in some of those and you still got an overall increase across all of them as an aggregate, as it says, of 20%. It says the company will fund this greater investment by deprioritizing initiatives that are not meeting expectations. And that's where I was wondering about the Warcraft thing there. Do they mean all of Warcraft? Because inevitably we have to view Battle for Azeroth as not meeting those expectations. How could they be? They were definitely jolted into action over something going wrong in October, early October. And it says, and reducing certain non-development and administrative related costs across the business. In other words, getting rid of about 9% of their workforce. That's what that means. They don't use the term job losses in official reports, of course. The company is also integrating its global and regional sales and go-to-market partnerships and sponsorship capabilities. I imagine that means closing down offices and centralising. So that will also be part of the job losses, of course. As part of these restructuring actions, the company expects to incur... I don't care about that. I'm not an actual shareholder. And then it's just describing here. Now, this is where, again, as a World of Warcraft player, I try and remind people that anything that happens in World of Warcraft is not going to have an effect on the macro performance of Activision Blizzard. It's not going to have any effect on its shares or anything like that. Because look at this. How many subscribers do we think World of Warcraft's got? 2, 2.5, 3 maybe? If that's an upper limit, surely. 3 million. So it says here, Activision Blizzard, blah, 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 is the world's most successful standalone interactive entertainment company. Wow. We delight hundreds of millions of monthly active users. Now, of course, not every user spends the same amount. An awful lot of those will be Candy Crush players. But it's not like World of Warcraft costs us an excessive amount of money. So we can't consider that each World of Warcraft user brings in a ridiculous amount more money than one of their other big games. Hundreds of millions of monthly active users. You can see just from that statement just how tiny the pool of World of Warcraft specific players is. Blizzard users in general, I think, are a much smaller number as well. But and I've read through a few things. I haven't read it in fine detail, of course. I've only just sort of seen this basically 40 minutes ago. But, everywhere where I look at it, it's, in terms of profits, it's just showing that it's increasing. And that it's also increased over its expectations. And someone said something on Twitter, and I retweeted it. And unfortunately, I think this is going to be the take-home from this. We've got a report here that uses the word record in relation to profits. God, I've lost count now. It's 18 or 19 times, just under 20 times. It's all the way through the report. It's bigging up the fact that it has made more money than ever before. And there's several parts of the report where it draws attention to the fact that it's made more money than it even projected. At least across the business as a whole. And yet, this is also the time to make 8 or 9% of that workforce redundant. Some of whom may be leaving, because I gather there's schemes to try and cushion the fall. It's not like they're going, right, clear your desk out you go. They've tried to, I think there are severance packages, but still, the fact that they're shedding up to 1/10 of their workforce at a time when they're making record profits. I mean, how does that look about a company? How does that look? And to think the way we used to view Blizzard, and people sort of blaming Activision Blizzard, but Blizzard themselves are part of this. Another thing it talks about in this report is changes to the leadership structure. In fact, I need to actually read that one out. It says, Bobby Kotick, Chief Executive Officer at Activision Blizzard, said, while our financial results for 2018 were the best in our history, we didn't realise our full potential. To help us reach our full potential, we have made a number of important leadership changes. Of course, we all know about Mike Morhaime being eased out. No one really believes he retired. Well, he has retired, but, it's a forced retirement, clearly. And there's been a number of other senior officers at Activision Blizzard across the company that have also gone very famously. It says, these changes should enable us to achieve the many opportunities our industry affords us, especially with our powerful owned franchises, our strong commercial capabilities, our direct digital connections to hundreds of millions of players, and our extraordinarily talented employees. Well, the 90% of them you're keeping anyway. So, you know, as someone pointed out, they're bragging in here about how great a company they are. Not just that they're stable, that they're growing, that they've achieved again the best results ever, the greatest profits ever. The shares, I mean, when they were talking about share value, in terms, or dividends, I should say, rather. Obviously, share value has gone down, but dividends have gone up. You know, so it's like what I mean about, you know, thinks of, well, why do people sell the shares? Well, because they thought they'd get a greater dividend elsewhere. It's not that the dividend was disappointing here. It's just there's somewhere else that's better. All there is to it. I mean, it's like you could go to a particular supermarket, isn't it, each week, or for years and years. And then on the week that they slash all the prices by 10%, a new supermarket opens up that's 20% cheaper than them. Well, you just go to the new supermarket, it's the same stuff. It's not that the original supermarket did anything wrong. In fact, it did even better. It's just there's somewhere that's even better. But they're boasting about their record profits, their record performance, at the same time as kicking a load of workers out of the company. It's just a bit off. And anyone who believes, I think anyone who believes that Blizzard will ever have any regard for anyone at all, you know, I think we can just abandon that right now, because, as I say, this isn't just Activision. Blizzard executives, J. Allen Brack, has been feeding a lot of this narrative as well. You know, he's the new CEO of Blizzard. And it's disappointing. But I think it's probably a natural process. You have a company, it starts off small. Of course they engage with everyone. They're very nice. All their workers, they see them on a day-to-day basis. Of course, it is like a family in that situation. Their customers are almost like family because, you know, they've got that close connection. As they get bigger and the people who own that company become executives, they become more and more detached from the day-to-day work. And because they're focused on the balance sheets, they spend more time talking to accountants than they do people. Not that I'm saying accountants aren't people, but you know what they say about accountants? You know what they say about accountants? They know the price of everything, but the value of nothing. And when you and this report, of course, you know, is written and driven by accountants. They look at a company that's making record profits, but let's find the areas where we can make even more profit, even if it's a result of human misery. Disappointment for our customers, disappointment for our employees, the remains of which may not even feel secure in their jobs as well. And of course, a happy worker is a productive worker, but an unhappy worker concerned about the security of their job is not going to give 100%. So there might be a knock-on effect there as well. But anyway, I could go on forever. I will leave it there. I'll put a link in the description below to where you can find this report for yourself and have a look through it. But anyway, I hope you found the video interesting, at least if you did. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you later.